Hello and welcome back. In the last section, we went ahead and created our profile page, and right now whenever a user is logged in, you get to see the profile page here, and you log out, the profile page essentially is disabled. All right. Now the question is, or the next task for us is to actually store some of this user information on our system. In order to do that, we have to build the support on the API side and then do the integration work between the UI and the API in order to facilitate the persistence of that data. Okay, so but even before we do that, we also need to supply that information to the API, and let's see how we can go about doing that. Right, so let's head over to our app.js. So every time you, let's say you sign out now and sign back in, all right, let's say you sign back in now, and the first thing that gets loaded is our home page, the home route, and that's going to be essentially through our app.js. Okay, so let's head over into our code here, and inside, let me go ahead and close these files, close all essentially, and let me head over to app.js. Okay. So right now, app.js is not doing a whole lot. It's just essentially wrapping around our routes. And in here, what I can do here is that because this is going to be the component that wraps all our components, and every time a user logs in, first component that gets loaded or rendered is our app through the index, obviously the index.js. Which doesn't do much except, essentially wrapping the entire app with our Auth0 provider. So what we can do here is essentially require in the Auth0. Okay, let me collapse the sidebar again. I'm going to say import, use Auth0 hook. All right, and this is going to be coming from this Auth0 React library. Okay. And in here, I'm going to destructure the user object, and also another property called isAuthenticated. Okay, isAuthenticated, and these are going to be coming from use Auth0 hook. Super. And let me also go ahead and import a React hook here, and that's called import use effect hook. Right, and this is going to be coming from React. All right, okay, nice. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to essentially call this hook, all right, and this is going to be use effect. Okay, and this is going to be called only once. And what I'm going to do here is, if a user is authenticated, and I'm going to print his user details. Okay, I'm going to say if is authenticated is true. Okay, I'm going to essentially console log the user. Okay, say Control L. Yeah, let's cut and paste it in here. Okay, let's give some space here. All right, and if the user is not logged in, all right, I'm gonna say user is not logged in right now. We don't know whether, because we need to print out something to say that a user is logged in or not, right? Okay, super. All I'm gonna say here is console log. I'm gonna say user is not authenticated. Okay, super. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and sign out, and I'm going to open my console here, and inside here what I'm going to do is essentially sign in. Let's go ahead and sign in, and now I should be seeing something like user authenticated, but right now I'm saying user is not authenticated, even though we are seeing that the sign out is coming here, the link to the sign out is rendering, and also the profile is rendering here, but we still see that the user is not authenticated. So what's happening here? So essentially, as we know, JavaScript is asynchronous. We cannot necessarily predict when a particular call essentially gets completed, we cannot predict the timing of the calls, right, in terms of when they return, and it's not sequential either. So in order to get this right, what we're going to do here is every time there is a change in is authenticated, we want to essentially execute this hook. So with this in place, we now actually get the user object. So essentially it executes the first time around, and then whenever the is authenticated becomes true, it again executes. Alright, so let's go ahead and try it one more time. I'm going to log out and sign in again with the same user, and the first time around it says not authenticated, and subsequently when we get a call back from our provider. Yeah, this is purely the nature of JavaScript. It's asynchronous and super. So we're getting all this information, and the next thing is to actually go ahead and persist some of this information, right? The email and the ID. Okay, that's what we'd be interested to begin with. So in order to do that, we have to go back to our APIs now, and inside of the APIs, what we have to do is create a new set of APIs for user management. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to the routes. I'm going to create a new file called user.js, and in here I'm going to require in the express library. I'm going to say express is equal to require express. Okay, and I'm going to then get the router based on this express, not the router is equal to express.router. Okay, super. And the last thing I want to do is essentially export this router. Okay, and in between, what I'm going to do here is essentially define a few routes. Let's see what those routes are. So the first route we want to do is essentially router.post, and it's going to be a create user post, and this is going to be /users. Okay, and I'm going to say I want to call a method create user in my controller. So if I save this right now, it should actually run into some errors. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here though is I'm going to go ahead and inside of the controllers, I'm going to create another file for user.js, and I'm going to say exports.create user. This is going to be a arrow function, and it's going to accept a request, a response, and a next for the sake of error handling. Okay, super. And let's see what we can do here. So for now we can just say res.status of 201, and we can say it with the JSON object that has a message. User created successfully. Yep, that's all that we can do right now, but we also need to make sure we actually import this in here. Let's see, I'm going to say const create user. Okay, and this is going to be coming from our controller, right? Let's require, I'm going to say controllers/user. Super. And the next thing we want to do here, we want to also define the model of the user. So I'm going to say go inside of models folder, create a file for user.js, and inside of this I want to create the user model. And to begin with, we'll not have a whole lot of attributes in here. So I'm going to say const, I'll require mongoose first, yeah, mongoose, and require mongoose, and then I'm going to define the user schema. This is going to be equal to new mongoose.schema, and this schema is going to have an ID of type string. Essentially, we're overriding the ID that's internally or natively provided by Mongo, and this is going to be of type string. Okay, And of course the required is going to be true. This is a mandatory field. And what else do we want to do? We also want the email to be stored, right? Email, and this is going to be of type string, of course. Alright, required is obviously true, and it also needs to be unique, of course. Alright, super. And after this, we also need the timestamps, right? So let's go ahead and specify that. I'm going to say inside of braces, timestamps. Alright, super. And the next thing we want to do here is essentially export the schema, right? So we're going to say module.exports is equal to mongoose.model here. Okay, and it's going to be called user, and this is going to be referenced by the user schema. Alright. And the next thing we want to do here is we want to import this in our controller. So I'm going to say import user. It's not going to be import, it's going to be required. Const user is equal to required, and we have to go one level above inside codes, one level above models and user. Okay, super. After this, we have to actually call the user.save method to actually save the user, right? Let's see how we can go about doing that. So let's go ahead and use this model to create our user. Open a try-catch block as we always do, because these are going to be using the async await syntax. Okay, I'm going to say let user. I'll define a new essentially variable for the user. Okay, and I'm going to say user is equal to new user, and we will provide whatever is coming as part of the body, right, in the request object. I'm going to say request.body, and once that is done, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say const new user is equal to user await. I'm going to be using the await syntax, which means I need to make it async here. Okay, let me go ahead and change that. I'm going to say I'm going to await on the result, await user.save. Okay, and then we're going to essentially send the user back to the caller. I'm going to say res.status of 201, which is created, and with a JSON object of new user. Super. And let me go ahead and get rid of this, otherwise it gives us some errors with respect to the headers. And inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and console log the error. So we will log the error here, and then we're going to say next of error. Okay, so essentially it'll invoke our error handling framework. Super. So I think we should be good here to test this right now. Let's go ahead and take a pause here, and then when we come back, we'll go ahead and test this particular creation part for the user. So let's take a brief pause here and come back soon.